And good afternoon from a slightly warming up Pittsburgh. Those of you who are here will know that we had second winter yesterday, and it was very cold and snow, and it's an outrage. I think it is a crime against humanity, and certainly against all those lovely budding trees and pretty flowers that are coming up. And if you are living in other places, I hope it's not as bad for you. But I do hear that Dublin is going to get snow tomorrow and the west of England is going to get it the day after. So good luck. Hello, Marge from Brookline. Welcome. You're the first one to say hello today. And there's Kay from Monroeville. I wonder, did it snow out there as well? See, we're on high ground here where I live. And sometimes it snows here and not elsewhere in Pittsburgh. But oh, it was cold as well. Having been in the 70s last week, or earlier in the week. James from White Oak, PA. Welcome. Shelley. You have ice on your balcony in Mount Lebanon. Well, you see, then again, you're on a more elevated land, rather like I am here in Regent Square, so you get the cold. But it'll be lovely by Sunday, I believe. Lovely sunset in the UK. Thank you, David. Of course, it's in the evening there, isn't it? Hello, John Henry. And but you're going to get snow, I believe, or at least a cold snap. Here, on the other hand, on Easter Sunday and Monday, apparently it's going to be back up in the 70s, which is very nice, which for those of you in centigrade land is about 25 degrees. Why do I always talk about the weather? Because it's Pittsburgh, and what other topic constantly changes 3 or 4 times a day than the weather? Hello, Barbara. Snow on the daffodils. You see, that's it. Snow on the daffodils. There's something just wrong with that. Hello, Grace. The sun is splitting the trees here in Dublin in the evening. Yes, the cold snap will come, so enjoy it while ye may. Hello, Jay. Welcome. I think you have vested interest today. What have we got? Robert, 65 this morning, and everyone was complaining about the cold. Well, serves you right. Serves you right for it being 80 last week. And I don't really mean that. Helen, warm anticipation. That's such a lovely thing to say. Thank you so much. I warmly anticipate all of you being there and tuning in with me. Rather wonderful. We've got a great loyal following now, but we could do with more. We can always do with more. And what's very interesting is that a lot of people, now that it's all up there on YouTube, a lot of people are now going back and looking at some of the earlier broadcasts from last year as well. And what's very nice is that we see names we haven't seen before going in and checking out those YouTube offerings. So spread the word to your friends. If they're interested at all, they can catch up with everything we did last year. I'm not sure anybody wants to do a binge watch of me, but you never know, there might be. But there's topics there to interest anybody who's interested in classic and Irish theatre, so do spread the word. And something funny happened to the light there. It all went blue. I don't know if it did on your screens, it did on mine. I went a little blue, thinking of the past. Anyway, how are we doing? We'll give it a couple more minutes for people to arrive. People can be tardy, or maybe it's the weather. Okay, hello there. All sunshine in the Netherlands. Well, it's tulip season. Of course it's sunshine in the Netherlands. All those lovely photographs of flowers suddenly in bloom and off for sale. Hello, Jim. Well, we miss doing everything in Pict, and ushering is a very important job. You are the first point of welcome. And hopefully we'll have ushering for you to do come the fall. Hello, Judy and Al. And hello, Blythe and Marigold. Welcome. You see, people come in at 2 o'clock, and then they have to get all tuned in. So that's why we give them a few minutes to settle in. Good, another minute, and then we'll make a start. There you are. There's the instruction. Make a donation. Visit our website. We do encourage donation. Just about everybody in Pittsburgh in the arts is always encouraging donation, and we know that there are an awful lot of things to donate to. So we do hope that you will remember us as well, because as I always say, every single dollar counts. And with the fact that we are unable to sell tickets at the moment, because we don't have anything to sell tickets to, we do seek those small donations. Every single dollar counts. It doesn't matter if it's $5, $10, $25. Please consider donating it, because it all adds up. Whatever you have that you can spare, $2,500. I mean, we're not proud. We'll take it. And you can do it at the website when you are tuning in to have a look on our YouTube channel to see what we've done in the past. So I think we'll make a start. First of all, I do have a huge announcement to make. We are absolutely thrilled. Hello, Marlene. Happy Easter. Yes, happy Easter to everybody as well. We do. Thank you, Catherine. Wonderful. Glad you're joining us. The big announcement is that, as you know, we've been doing these webinars now for a year. We started a year ago, and they're every week. We took a little break over the Christmas festivities, but that was the only real break we took. So we've been doing it for a year, and it has remained free and always will be free. That's our pledge. But it does cost money to make these programs. So we always ask for sponsors for anybody interested. The great news is that the Allegheny Foundation, bless them, bless their hearts, and all pertaining unto them, have given us a grant to cover the cost of webinars for a year. So that's an amazing thing. The Allegheny Foundation are blessed and precious, and we thank them so much, because it guarantees that we can keep putting these out for at least a year, and hopefully into the future, because I do think as part of our Peak to Educates program, it's a service we want to offer. And a lot of teachers are now using some of the webinars as teaching aids and for discussion or for debate as a starting point on teaching a particular program. Everybody is welcome to use these programs as they see fit. And if it helps with teaching, or if it helps with discussions or book clubs or whatever, please make use of them. And the more you can spread the word about them, of course. Hello, Dennis. Hello, Laurie. Late, but we forgive you. The more you can spread the word about these and encourage people to make use of them for whatever teaching process they want, please do so. The only thing that we ask you to do is spread the word. But anyway, once again, thank you to the Allegheny Foundation. Our webinars are assured for 12 months, and that is great. So, Hamlet, on to Hamlet. And as I say, we're talking about Hamlet in his own words, and particularly today with his relationship to Gertrude, his mother. We have some guest artists today, so I want to say thank you to the Theatre Authority, who have allowed us to employ some equity members, and we will be saying welcome to Shammen, McCune, and to Alec Silberblatt, who will be giving us Gertrude and Hamlet. Now, as usual, this is not I'm not going to try and teach you the play. This is not a lecture. This is a discussion, and I encourage you to make comments and to disagree. But this is just my view, and that's the same for every webinar that we do. It's just my opinion. And as I always say, I may be wrong, and you're perfectly entitled to disagree with every word I say, but at least we get talking about it. So, Hamlet, you know, the most written about of all Shakespeare's plays, apart from its essential plot, and it is an essential plot, it's almost like a thriller, where we know a crime has been committed, and we suspect who did it, but we need to have that proven. And then once we got that proven, we need to punish the guilty. It's you know, it could be a 6-part made for TV on HBO, but it isn't. It's a play by Shakespeare. So underneath that essential plot, you have wonderful relationships. And Hamlet travels through the play, engaging with and disengaging from relationships. And this week I want to look at the first major relationship that he has. And I'm not going to encompass the whole thing. I'm just going to take some little snapshots of what that relationship is. And that is the one with his mother. So to begin with, I put forward the proposition, Hamlet loves his mother. There is no real doubt about that in my mind. He loves his mother, like any good boy should. He's Irish, Danish-Irish, but you know. Gertrude loves her son. I don't think there's any doubt about that either. And I think from my perspective on the play, it's important that that is grasped, because when a mother and son love one another, you have all the potential for disarray, argument, fighting, and loathing and detestation and coming back together again. All the materials are there. But you've got to start on that basis that there is an absolute love of mother for son, son for mother. She is also aware of his depression. And at the beginning of the play, as we discussed last week, Hamlet is unquestionably depressed. And he has very good reasons to be. He is still, when we first meet him, in continuing mourning for his father, where Claudius, the new king, has said, okay, it was great, he was wonderful, we buried him, it was lovely, but now we've got to get on with life. Now we've got to celebrate. Already he's married the widow. Hamlet is still in mourning for his father. He is still wearing mourning clothes. He's still dressed in black. Gertrude, on the other hand, has accepted the new reality and has moved on. And she desperately wants Hamlet to move on with her, to accept the reality of the present situation. You know, first you ask yourself, well, what is the situation? I mentioned it briefly last week, the politics of the time. Here we are in Denmark. Denmark is under threat from invasion by young Fortinbras of Norway. So there could be a war. There is a need in such a time for stable leadership. When you have a potential war, you need stable leadership. You need leadership by somebody who knows how to run a war and how to fight diplomatically as well as militarily. So you need a bloody good leader who knows what he's doing when the country's under threat. It is a country of elective monarchy, so the right to rule does not immediately fall upon the eldest son. The council of elders, if you wish, the senior members of the aristocracy can vote and decide who should be king. And they have voted for Claudius, who is the king's brother. They have voted to keep it in a senior generation. Now, I don't think Claudius is necessarily much older than Hamlet, but he's an experienced politician, he's a military leader, he is a stable pair of hands to put the country in at a point when war could happen. And there's also the question of the political union, to bring and hold everything together. This notion of the political union of Claudius and the former queen of Old Hamlet brings together a certainty. So it's a good political position to be in. Doesn't take into any account the feelings of young Hamlet, who is himself a scholar, not a soldier, not a politician. He's a scholar. And as for Gertrude, one must also look at the question of why would she do it? Well, because she possibly understands the political situation, but there is also that selfish factor, and there is always a selfish factor in everything. What would you rather be, a queen or a dowager living in a tower? And I suspect she would rather be a queen. And also there is unquestionably a degree of love between them. Certainly, I think that the relationship between the two of them has, dare I say, a physicality that may no longer have existed with old Hamlet, who was old. I hate being old. So anyway, there you have it. She wants Hamlet to join into the family arrangement and the political arrangement for the sake of the country, for the sake of stability, that the country needs stability. Hamlet needs to join into that. So for the sake of stability, she makes a plea to Hamlet. Let's have a listen.
Good Hamlet, cast thy nighted colour off, and let thine eye look like a friend on Denmark. Do not forever with thy veiled lid seek for thy noble father in the dust. Thou knowest 'tis common. All that lives must die, passing through nature to eternity. If it be common, why seems it so particular with thee?
Madam, nay, it is. I know not seems. 'Tis not alone my inky cloak, good mother, nor customary suits of solemn black, nor windy suspiration of forced breath, no, nor the fruitful river of the eye, nor the dejected behavior of the visage, together with all forms, moods, shapes of grief that can denote me truly. These indeed seem, for these are actions a man might play. But I have within, which passes show, these but the trappings and the suits of woe.
Hamlet clearly isn't buying it, or buying into it. He's not buying into the argument that what was is gone, what is now is now. It was a good solution, it was the right solution, it's going to be great, you can stop mourning now because we've got the future to look for. But his statement, quite frankly, is, no, not buying it. I am staying in mourning for my father. Now, what's the real reason behind that? I believe that this is at this moment because he knows no other facts other than that his mother has married his uncle and that they have stopped mourning his father. So I believe his real reason for this is a kind of Puritan disgust at her marriage. Within a month, he says, or ere those shoes were old wherein she followed my poor father's body. And by any stretch of the imagination, and even though it may be a political marriage, a month is a very brief time to mourn a dear departed husband. But we must also remember Denmark is under threat. The nation, the country, Denmark is under threat from invasion. So things may have to happen quickly. There is never just that. So in any great tragedy, it's never as simple as one side is good, the other side is bad. There are reasons for it. There are justifications for it. Hamlet cannot accept the justifications. Something sticks in his craw. Something says, this is not right. And his opinion of her, the mother that he loves, is a very general view of the Puritan mind. Frailty, thy name is woman. So he tends to look upon, I believe he tends to look upon women as frail vessels, as not as certain, not as strong, not as wise, not as pure as men. It is a Puritan opinion. That was part of Elizabethan thinking as well, especially the new thinking of the newly Protestant, the effect that Calvin and Luther were having in Europe at the time, and especially in Elizabethan England and later Elizabethan England, moving into the Jacobean period. So this was a political view. It was arguable that women were frail, and therefore it gives him the leeway to try to understand, even though he doesn't approve. He may love his mother, but it allows that resentment of her weakness to exist within that perceived relationship he has with her. And the ghost has also added to this, because the ghost not only tells Hamlet that he was murdered, not only tells Hamlet that it was his brother who murdered him, not only tells Hamlet that his brother is rotten, but also points out the consequence of that murder and the consequence of that marriage, and it's very important that a particular word is used, to the Puritan mind. The ghost says, "Let not the royal bed of Denmark be a couch for luxury and damned incest." So the implication, even from the ghost who still loves his wife, who still does not want harm to come to his wife or his widow, but recognizes that what has happened as a consequence of the murder, and the murder may have been political, but it was certainly a power rush on Claudius's part. The result of that is that the widow, the mother of Hamlet, has become involved in an incestuous relationship. And that's biblical, I pointed out last week. It is biblical. When a man cannot marry his brother's wife, because when a man and a woman marry, they become one flesh. Therefore, you are marrying the flesh that is your brother. You can't do it. Under biblical law, it's wrong. It's incest. And that's a fairly precise injunction from the ghost. And he goes on to build that image. He talks about Claudius, that incestuous, that adulterate beast with witchcraft of his wits, won to his shameful lust, that constant, very Puritan attitude, the will of my most seeming virtuous queen. She seemed to be virtuous. She seemed to be pure. And yet she went with this. She went with this notion of marrying Claudius. "Oh, Hamlet," he goes on, "what a falling off was there from me, whose love was of that dignity that it went hand in hand even with the vow I made to her in marriage." And what is the vow you make in marriage? Faithfulness. It is, you marry and you keep thee only unto her. And the order of marriage and the system and the principles of marriage were that. It was a pure state, and it should be a pure state. She has diminished that vow by marrying Claudius. To decline, he goes on, upon a wretch whose natural gifts were poor to those of mine. Not only has she betrayed me, but she betrayed me with a lesser being. Hamlet the Ghost is set up very much as Super King, as the great national hero, the great warrior king, the great governing king. This was a king of enormous power and authority, and she was blessed to be his wife. And then he got old and he got murdered. But like son, like father, the ghost has painted a picture of a weak and fallen woman. He does not, however, call for vengeance on her. And that is very important. That's really worth noting. There is no call for vengeance on Gertrude. Gertrude is looked upon by old Hamlet, by the ghost, as being a woman who's lost her virtue, but not necessarily through guile or intelligence or wit, but through force of circumstance. She has become a victim because of her frailty. Frailty, thy name is woman. The dead king, indeed, appears to love Gertrude just as his son does. And just as his son does, the dead king pities her weakness, pities her for being weak. And yet, in spite of all this, Gertrude seems to care constantly and consistently for Hamlet's welfare. She is always concerned very deeply. I mean, when after the visitation of the ghost and Hamlet makes the decision to pretend to be mad, and that is another point of contention as well, is Hamlet mad or is Hamlet acting mad? Well, he says he's going to act mad, and he acts mad throughout the play. I think any real madness on Hamlet's part is part of that depression and that sense of extreme anxiety and extreme responsibility and the burden of responsibility. But the madness, the behavioral madness, is putting on an antique disposition to behave as a madman. But Gertrude buys into it. She thinks her son is going crazy, and she has evidence for it. The grief and the sudden marriage and all of this can play upon the mind, so much so that she, with Claudius, encourages the arrival of friends like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to take him out of himself, to to make him feel better by surrounding him with the familiar. He's not familiar in Elsinore. He's not familiar in Denmark. He spends his time in Wittenberg. He's been there for a very long time and planned to go back. So he's in a strange place at a strange time with strange moods. They, and this particularly Gertrude, bring in old friends to help him. There is a deep concern on her part. She's also concerned about his behavior as it grows towards Ophelia. When Polonius comes up with his great plan or great realization, he's mad because I've told my daughter not to talk to him, and produces the love letters, which is such a cruel thing to do. Yet more evidence comes to Gertrude that her son is going crazy, not only of grief and of loneliness, but also the fact that he's not allowed to talk to the girl that she wants him to marry. So all of that behavior causes Gertrude grief. There is another question that one should ask, and it's a very simple one. It begs the question, did she know about the assassination? Was she part of it, or simply its innocent benefactor? Because that question always hangs over Gertrude. How much did she know? Did she suspect? Was she part of it? I personally don't think she did know, and I don't think she was part of it, but I think she may suspect. But she also accepted the fact that the past is gone, the future, we must move on, we must deal with things to come and not dwell on what has been. Hamlet doesn't know whether his mother knew, but he does need to know. He needs to know somewhere deep down, very profoundly, he needs to know what are his mother's feelings towards what he knows, that there is corruption. How does she feel about it? Is she aware of it? Does she care? In the sequence, as we know, there is a sequence where Hamlet, still trying to convince himself that the ghost is telling the truth, needs to prove it, and as we looked at last week, realizes that guilty creatures looking at a play might show their guilt, and realizes that the play is the thing wherein he'll catch the conscience of the king. And again, as I said last week, that is very much to do with Shakespeare's own understanding of the power of theatre. It's very brilliant use of his own skill, his own talent, and his own genius placed into a play to demonstrate the power of a play. Brilliant. What is interesting is that when he's watching Claudius and his reaction to the play, he's also watching Gertrude. And it is Claudius who rises. It is Claudius who shows guilt, not Gertrude. Still doesn't prove everything to him. But once he's seen the reaction of Claudius, once he's got that, you can then say quite frankly at that moment, the moment when he needs to know what his mother feels, at that very moment, he is absolutely fit to kill. Let's look.
'Tis now the very witching time of night, when churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes out contagion to this world. Now could I drink hot blood and do such bitter business as the day would quake to look on. Soft, now to my mother. O heart, lose not thy nature. Let not ever the soul of Nero enter this firm bosom. Let me be cruel, not unnatural. I will speak daggers to her, but use none. My tongue and soul be in this hypocrite's. How in my words somever she may be shent, to give them seals, never. My soul consent.
I sort of love this because you do see conflict in Hamlet at every single turn. You know, he could do one thing, but that would conflict with another thing, and he can't do both, and he can't do one. But he At the very moment, as I say, when he is fit to kill, now could I drink hot blood and do such bitter business as the day would quake to look on. I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready. Somebody give me a dagger, I'll go and kill somebody. At that same moment, he cannot hurt his mother. Let me be cruel, but not unnatural. I will speak daggers to her, but use none. So he knows that whatever he might do to Claudius, and he is so angry at this point, so angry that if Claudius came within 500 feet of him, he'd kill him. And at the same moment, he has to contain his anger, and I will use the word disgust with his mother. He has to contain it. The conversation that follows that, this wonderful conversation between Hamlet and Gertrude, is the major turning point, I believe, in the play. It's a kind of debate where Hamlet comes in with one proposition and Gertrude responds in innocence, and that debate unfolds and goes on and continues, while at the same time something absolutely horrific happens right in front of her. Now, don't put yourself in Hamlet's position, put yourself in Gertrude's position. Within this scene is the shift in Hamlet's focus from investigation to determination. But something awful will happen. Let's take a look.
No, by the root, not so. You are the queen, your husband's brother's wife, and would it were not so, you are my mother. Come, come, sit you down. You shall not budge. You go not till I set you up a glass where you may see the inmost part of you.
What wilt thou do? Thou wilt not murder me! Help! Ho!
And a voice answers from behind the arras, and Hamlet stabs. Now the blood is so hot. He is so angry. Once he hears a voice respond, in her room it has to be Claudius, and he stabs, and Polonius dies. His killing of Polonius is quite accidental. He thought it was Claudius. It's one rash action that proves to be completely tragic. Not that he has a lot of sympathy for Polonius anyway, because Polonius is an interfering old man. But it strikes into the heart of Gertrude. He's already made a threat to her that he's going to do something. And he's already said something to her that must be really shocking. Again, put yourself into the mind of Gertrude. And he says, and would it were not so, you are my mother. I wish you weren't my mother. Said to a mother, how does the mother feel? Especially when the mother feels tremendous love for and concern for her son. But right in front of her eyes, he kills the chief counselor of the state. Dead. Bang. And also, let us point out, the father of his girlfriend. The father of the young girl she hoped Hamlet would marry. At this point, her son, her beloved son, does indeed appear to be actually mad. Again, look at it from Gertrude's perspective. What she has feared, what she has doubted, what has concerned her, suddenly, right in front of her, in her bedroom, appears true. Her son has just stabbed somebody without even seeing who it was, killed them. So he does appear completely to have lost it. And the other side of that argument, aside from the killing of Polonius, which in the great scheme of things is an incident rather than a major event, his interrogation of his mother from this point on adds to her fear of his sanity because it is so puritanically intense. He's like a great relentless logical lawyer asking questions that she either cannot or will not understand. And she can't understand it, therefore she probably thinks this is madness. Hamlet asks the questions that the kind of questions that anybody who is accused but not knowing the facts cannot answer. It's a little bit like Kafka and the trial, because her response as he asks questions is, "What have I done that thou darest wag thy tongue in noise so rude against me? What have I done? You're this, you're this, you're this, but what have I done? But you're that, you're that, you're that, but what have I done?" And he answers her with further suggested accusation. Watch this.
Such an act that blurs the grace and blush of modesty, calls virtue hypocrite, takes off the rose from the fair forehead of an innocent love and sets a blister there, makes marriage vows as false as dicer's oaths.
Ay me! What act that roars so loud and thunders in the index?
Look here, upon this picture, and on this, the counterfeit presentment of two brothers. See what a grace was seated on this brow? Hyperion's curls, the front of Jove himself. An eye like Mars to threaten and command. A station like the herald Mercury, new lighted on a heaven-kissing hill. A combination in a form indeed, where every god did seem to set his seal to give the world assurance of a man. This was your husband. Look you now what follows. This is your husband, like a mildewed ear blasting his wholesome brother. Have you eyes? You cannot call it love, for at your age the heyday in the blood is tame. It's humble and waits upon the judgment. And what judgment would step from this to this? Sense, sure you have, else could you not have motion. But what devil was that thus hath cozened you at hoodman blind? Oh, shame, where is thy blush?
Oh, Hamlet, speak no more. Thou turn'st mine eyes into my very soul, and there I see such black and grained spots that will not leave their tinct.
That reaction by Gertrude is the cause of much debate among actors and actresses who play the scene, as I know only too well, having done the production several times. What is her reaction there? He is calling upon her guilt. He is questioning the morality, but not just the morality of her marriage to Claudius, but the stupidity. Where did you come from when you were married to this guy and you end up married to this guy? What were you thinking? You cannot call it love, for at your age the heyday in the blood is tame, which is, of course, what younger people always level at older people. You're perfectly capable of having a physical relationship quite well into your years, even back in Elizabethan times. So it wasn't simply, but he's saying, it's lust. Lust? What are you going to lust after? Look at you, you're old. Why did you do it? Why did you do it? What made you compare these two people? Why? And there's a reason for that. Because I think at this point, Hamlet is certain that she was innocent of the crime of assassination and guilty of the lust that led to incest. And this is the point that he wants to try to cure. He needs to cleanse her guilt in regard to incest. When he accuses her of all of this, Hamlet, thou turnest my eyes into my very soul, and there I see such black and grained spots as will not leave their tint. It is to my opinion, it is the moment where Gertrude finally admits, yes, it is an incestuous marriage. Yes, it is technically wrong. And that does not take away from all the logical reasons why the marriage happened, as I say, the political reasons, the social, and the fact that she may love Claudius and he her. And I do believe that there is a love there. But here we have Hamlet, the Puritan, and let us remember this. He's got a very, very distinctly Puritan view of what is right and what is wrong, what is moral and what is immoral, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. He does have that very, very monochromatic view of the world. It is the view of an academic. It is the view of somebody who has studied logic, who has studied philosophy. It is not the point of view and opinion of a passionate young man who has studied life. The Puritan wants to preserve the purity of his mother. To put it another way, many sons tend to want their mothers to be virgins. Yeah. So, her reaction, how do you react to that? How do you respond to that? Again, look at it from Gertrude's perspective. She's listening to the words of Hamlet. And how does she respond? What do? You're a mother in distress, filled with concern, filled with worry, and conscious of the fact that things aren't going according to plan, and that what she did was probably morally incorrect, but she had her reasons and all of that. She's a person too. So her reaction in this scene is to agree and to play along with him, to whatever he asks. It's as if she believes that he is a danger to himself, and therefore a danger to the state. He has killed Polonius thinking it was Claudius, therefore he will kill Claudius if he gets the opportunity. There is a serious situation in hand here. And so when he asks her to change her ways, she just agrees. Now, right in the middle of the scene, very interestingly, Shakespeare has the ghost reappear. Because Hamlet has not taken action against Claudius. In fact, he has, except it wasn't Claudius, it was Polonius. And the ghost comes back to remind him of his duty, of his moral obligation. But the ghost also sees that Gertrude is in distress. Look, he says to Hamlet, amazement on thy mother sits. O step between her and her fighting soul. Speak to her, Hamlet. Now, in this point, Gertrude it's torn apart and deeply tormented. A murder of the old man, Hamlet talking to thin air, the argument about her guilt, the argument about the suggested inappropriateness, would dare one say corruption of the incestuous marriage. All of these are tearing her apart. And the fact that her son is crazy. So the ghost says, step between her and her fighting soul. Lovely, wonderful phrase. Speak to her, Hamlet. And he does. And in speaking to her, and because it is better for her to bring Hamlet down from this raging, insane, crazy, wild, dangerous, puritanical thing that he is, to try to get him to calm, she agrees to everything he says. He gets her agreement to behave herself as a mother should, to leave the bed of Claudius, to behave like the widow of a king, not the wife of an assassin, to behave with morality, to behave as mother of the nation, rather than wallowing in the incestuous bed of Claudius. She agrees to it all. She swears to it all. Hamlet leaves, Claudius arrives, and she tells Claudius everything. She tells him exactly what Hamlet has asked for, exactly what has been going on, the fact that Hamlet killed Polonius, all of these things. In a sense, you could say, she betrays her son to her new husband, but in the belief that she is helping the mad Hamlet. Because Hamlet is the prince. It's not some common person who killed Polonius. He is the prince. And the deal is done. Let's send him away. Let's send him out of the country. Exile, whatever you want to call it. We'll send him to England. As Claudius says to Hamlet, for thine especial safety. Always worry when a king says for thine especial safety. It usually means you're going to die. Which is what Claudius's plan is, that he will go to England and gives instruction to the English king to chop off his head. Actually, interestingly enough, when Tom Stoppard wrote his play Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, he wrote it initially as a one-act play called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern at the Court of King Lear, because we might assume that that was who was ruling England at the time that Hamlet was in Denmark. Anyway, totally beside the point. So because of his anger, because of his frustration, because of his own sense of guilt at being inactive, because of his to him obnoxious behavior of his mother, he finds himself now exiled, sent away. Nothing he can do about it. He has to leave. He has failed, in a sense, in his obligation to the ghost. And he's failed, in a sense, because he cannot condemn his mother. Let's take a little look about that. Gertrude herself, because I've got a point that I want to conclude with, which is debatable, and I'll be interested to see what other people think. But let's take a little look at Gertrude herself. She is, I think, there is the aspect of her being a mother is deeply important. Look at the way, when Ophelia drowns, look at the way that she tells Laertes about his sister's death. The way she talks is caring, it's maternal, it's filled with genuine sympathy. She almost makes this into an idyllic poem. Just look.
One woe doth tread upon another's heel. Your sister's drowned, Laertes. There is a willow grows ascant the brook that shows his hoar leaves in the glassy stream. Therewith fantastic garlands did she make of crowflowers, nettles, daisies, and long purples, that our cold maids do dead men's fingers call. There on the pendant bough her crownet weeds, clamoring to hang, an envious sliver broke, when down her weedy trophies and herself fell in the weeping brook. Her clothes spread wide and mermaid-like, a while they bore her up, which time she chanted snatches of old lauds, till that her garments, heavy with their drink, pulled the poor wretch from her melodious lay to muddy death.
Now that speech is riddled with sympathy, riddled with understanding. It is compassionate, it is gentle. But it's more than that, because if, as is suggested at the funeral, Ophelia took her own life, cannot be buried in holy ground, cannot be given the full rites of a Christian burial, Gertrude doesn't say your sister killed herself. She doesn't say, yeah, she drowned herself. Yeah, she committed suicide. No, she paints it in a way that is pitiful, full of pity, pitiful in the pure sense, full of pity, full of understanding, full of compassion. She gives that clear impression that it was all a terrible accident, and that Ophelia, who was by this time completely away with the fairies, her mind had to a large extent gone. Her depression had taken her into the realm of being absent, and that she fell gently but accidentally into the stream, and that even then she was singing and happy, and then slowly sank into the water and died in great peace and beauty by accident. This speech is a speech of absolute compassion from a woman who understands what it is to be a mother, something that we never see Ophelia experiencing. The closest thing to a mother that she has in the play is Gertrude. So Gertrude's own grief, Gertrude's own hurt and loss and pain for her son is also balanced with her grief and loss and pain for the loss of this potential daughter. And the compassion that she feels for Laertes is also a sorrow that she feels for herself. This is a woman who is worthy of Hamlet's love as a mother, in spite or regardless of the act of marital incest that occurred. Hamlet is the Puritan here, not Gertrude. Hamlet, to an extent, is the selfish one might argue. It's matched, by the way, when Hamlet returns and Ophelia's there, he happens to return at the moment of Ophelia's burial, which is, of course, theatrically very convenient, but it is a play. And even at the graveside, while Laertes and Hamlet are fighting over who loved her most and behaving like annoying men, Gertrude is the one who has the sympathy. She gives us a tiny glimpse of the future that she had hoped for. Had everything got, had we moved on from the death of old Hamlet into the new world, into the new reality where Claudius is king, we can beat off Fortinbras, everything will be fine, and the other future she wanted. I hoped thou should have been my Hamlet's wife. I thought thy bride bed to have decked, sweet maid, and not have strewed thy grave. So all those hopes for a better future, that the removal of the old king, okay, he was murdered, it was a bad thing, naughty, shouldn't do that, but these things happen. Now we got this, let's move on into the future, stop mourning Hamlet, put on better clothes, let's all accept it, let's move forward, go marry Ophelia, produce an heir, and we got, no, it doesn't happen that way, because the guilt has to be dealt with. It was a murder, and Hamlet must purge. At the end of the day, Hamlet's relationship with his mother is, I believe, an allegory for his relationship with Denmark. Gertrude is what remains of the old kingdom, his father's Denmark. In a sense, we're looking at it from this perspective, she is Denmark. She was married to the old king. The old king dies. She marries the new king. She's still the queen. But she has become corrupt. Now, remember what I said last week about the notion of Martin Luther and the corruption, which was just purely a theory, that Martin Luther happened to go to Wittenberg. But Martin Luther set out to rescue Mother Church from the corruption of the Pope. Hamlet sets out, in a sense, to rescue his mother from the corruption of Claudius. Hamlet, in a way, is rescuing Denmark from the corruption of the new king. Marcellus, when they're chasing the ghost at the beginning, says the line, "Something is rotten in the state of Denmark. There is a rot that's come in. It wasn't there before the old king died. It's there now." Denmark is the consistent thing. Old king, new king. Gertrude is the consistent thing. Old king, new king. So to my mind, there is that allusion, if you like, that Gertrude is Denmark. Gertrude is the body politic. Gertrude is the people. Gertrude is the land. And that Hamlet has to cleanse it. She was the queen of a pure kingdom. She has, in Hamlet's eyes, become the victim and supporter of the rottenness that now infects that pure kingdom. So he must purify her, and by association, the kingdom itself. By purifying and cleansing Gertrude, he purifies and cleanses Denmark. And the only way you can do that is by following his father's dictum, vengeance. However, and what is most interesting, is that it is not as a direct act of revenge that Hamlet actually eventually kills Claudius. That's what he set out to do, vengeance. He screams that word aloud at one point in the play. But when he has the opportunity, when he has returned, and then Claudius seems to be moderately friendly, what he doesn't know is that Claudius is set up with Laertes to kill Hamlet with a poisoned sword, does the challenge, Hamlet accepts. Horatio is not happy about it, but Hamlet says there's a providence in the fall of a sparrow. We'll talk about that next week. But Hamlet has agreed to let things go to a natural conclusion. He's ready to revenge, but not just yet. He will see how things turn out. And then something happens yet again to twist the whole thing and to force Hamlet's hand. During the fight, Hamlet, Gertrude offers Hamlet a goblet of wine. Claudius has already dropped a pearl into it. The pearl is poisoned. The wine is poisoned. Hamlet refuses the wine, but Gertrude drinks it, and it kills her. And Hamlet, realizing who has done that, kills Claudius. But he is killing Claudius. He does not revenge his father. It is he avenges his mother and himself. In a funny way, Hamlet is cleansing, I think, the new world without reference back to the old world. He does not say, I kill you in the name of my father. He kills Claudius in the name of his mother. He kills Claudius in the name of himself, in the name of Denmark. So that relationship with the mother, I think, this is not a production note. It's not the way you sort of set about directing the piece, but I think it is an interesting observation, shall we say, in the process of building a production. That if you view his responsibility, and it ties also to that final soliloquy we talked about last week, how all occasions do inform against me. Fortinbras is ready to fight for his kingdom and for a little patch of ground that isn't big enough to bury the dead. If you look at it in that sense, that at the end of the day, Hamlet fights for Gertrude. Hamlet needs to cleanse the state, and that cleansing of Gertrude is the cleansing of the state. That is his purpose, that is his function, and that is eventually his final destiny. But it does put a perspective onto that relationship between them, which isn't as simple as she's his mother and she married his uncle. No, she's much more important to him than that, and it matters to him that she remains, or at least reestablishes a sense of purity, that the corruption is cleansed from her, that the something that is rotten in the state of Denmark is also something that is rotten in the state of Gertrude. They are parallel, and that function of the character is to demonstrate Hamlet's need to purify. I keep using the word Puritan, and I'll be doing that in the next two programs. So there you have it. That is Hamlet and Gertrude. You cannot, in the space of an hour, sum up the totality of any of these relationships. What we're doing is simply looking at them and asking some questions, and hopefully making you look at them again and ask some questions of yourselves and of the play, and if you want, of me. Here we have our question straight away. Dennis, yes, they would. Wittenberg was definitely the source of dangerous ideas. Dr. Faustus, yes, was also. Wittenberg was a very forward-looking place of learning. And yes, Faustus was set there as a play, but Luther, and don't forget, Luther was a Catholic and considered himself as such. He wanted to cleanse the church from within, as opposed to Calvin, who just wanted to bring it down and was a much, Calvinism was a much stricter, and still is a much stricter Puritan state. But Calvinism and Lutheranism were prevalent and were dangerous. England at this stage was Protestant. The Church of Rome was still dangerous. Don't forget, the Pope had excommunicated Elizabeth I and authorized her killing by assassination. So we were in a dangerous world. People were suffering, and before Elizabeth, Protestants were burnt to death. Elizabeth burnt a few Catholics in her time. So the whole topic based around Wittenberg would have been, shall we say, testy. Yeah, there was another question that I don't think Americans get the whole idea of body politic and how the king's body stands for the state. Well, that's basic. Well, we did for the last 4 years, but it is the notion that the king is the state. The king is Denmark. They even use that term. Gertrude says it to Hamlet right at the beginning, look well on Denmark, meaning not just the country, but the king. That the king was the state, and absolute, because the king was appointed by God to function as actual ruler, to create laws. Now, most of Europe at that stage apart from France, of course, was beginning to develop constitutional monarchy, where parliaments had some power, some limited power, the power to raise tax. If a king or a queen wanted to fight a war, they had to go to parliament and get them to raise taxes. So things had moved forward, but still the monarch had a certain absolute degree. And therefore, who the monarch was and what the monarch was represented who the country was and what the country was. Is Hamlet completely convinced that the ghost is not an evil force that seeks only to harm all? Yes, he is, after he has seen the play work. Up to that point, he's still questioning, well, could it be? Maybe, it's possible. The devil has powers to form a pleasing shape. That could have been the devil. It could have been. How do I prove it? How do I know? The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. And once he sees the king's reaction, the whole question of whether it is an evil spirit is gone from Hamlet's mind. It's his father. It happened. You didn't treat Now is a Very Witching Hour of Night as one of Hamlet's soliloquies. Was it not one? Well, yes, it is one, in that he is talking to himself. Yeah, technically it is. I mean, as I said, I can only do a certain amount in the amount of time we have in these programs. It is a soliloquy in a sense, because he is explaining to himself and to us what he is about to do. So yes, technically it is a soliloquy. Yes, sorry I didn't treat it as such, but it is. Quite a short one and a very active one. I think it's actually the center point of the play. If you look at the balance and weight of the play, that's the moment. Now is a very witching. Now I can do things. Now I can do it. So that you could say that the first half of the play is getting rid of the doubts, getting rid of the fears, coming to a point when he says, now I can do something. And he goes and does it, and it's the wrong thing. He kills Polonius. And then all his plans, he gets sent away. Everything that he had the energy at that moment to do dissipates through the debate with his mother, and off he goes to England, and he has to come back and start again. Mind you, in the meantime, he does send Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to their deaths, but that is for the program after the next one. Anybody else? No? Well, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you again to the Allegheny Foundation. You see it there on the screen. It's wonderful that they're doing this and helping us to do it. Do join us again next week when we will be discussing Hamlet and those near and dear to him. We'll be having a little look at Ophelia and indeed Horatio. And the following week, we'll be looking a little bit more at the Hamlet-Horatio relationship as well. Sorry, there's another one there. The density and intensity of ruling family. Thank you. Oh, no, there was a comment. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you also to Shammen and to Alec for their contribution as well. It's wonderful. It's tricky to do this because we have to pre-record and edit and put it all together, and they have to act separately because of COVID. But thank you to both of them. We'll have more actors back for you next week, and it's going to be very exciting. But in the meantime, thank you for being with me. Do go to the website. Do think about donating, even a few dollars. It makes such a difference to us. Do spread the word about these. And remember, everything is now up on YouTube, and you can go back and look at these again and again and again. And share them with your students if you have any. In the meantime, have a lovely week. Have a lovely Easter break. But don't forget, keep wearing your masks, get the vaccination if you can, look after one another, and look after yourselves. Bye now.